do a literature or systematic review search. So today we're going to talk about what they are and what they aren't. If you're interested, the slides are available here, and I believe the slides are going to be popped into the chat as well, so you can follow along. Everything is available on the slides is clickable as well. So just leave this here for a few seconds in case you want to scan it with your phone, but it will also be in the chat, a link to the slides. Okay. So first, the first step of like considering what type of literature search to do, whether it's for systematic reviews or rapid review, scoping review, whatever it may be, is really considering your research question, because the methodology varies based off the type of question you're asking. So things you can consider are topics vary in their comprehensiveness in the literature. So you may need to broaden or narrow your research question accordingly, depending if it's a literature search or a systematic review. So you don't want to search for outcomes when you're doing these type of searches, unless like for literature searches, you can sometimes, because it inserts bias into your search. So think about your question with like your population and your intervention, and any comparison, and really build searches and questions based off that. Because you're usually searching for that answer. It's kind of, I always think about it like you're building a hypothesis with your research question, and those outcomes that you're measuring aren't something you want to put into your study, right? You're trying to see what those are, and that's the same thing for when developing a research question. I'm going to talk some about frameworks today. These are really helpful in helping you conceptualize your research question. These can help, you don't have to be bound to them. So your questions matter. So there's different types of questions. So this is from an article talking about different types of reviews, whether it's systematic reviews or scoping reviews, and it breaks it down on different frameworks to use. The most common one, the one you all are probably most familiar with, is the PICO, right? But there's tons of other ones. I also like the PICO with like the capital C little o. It's right here. This one's really useful when I work with students, because sometimes like your question doesn't follow in that typical PICO format, right? You usually have a population, but you aren't always comparing two interventions. So this one talks about context or what you're interested in examining. So that one's really helpful. There's some other ones too that I think, like Cocoa Pops is another one. I just like to make you aware of these. It's really your question kind of depends on your search and so yeah, let me move on for that. So systematic reviews develop a research question. So you need to use some type of framework when you're working on a systematic review. You don't have to be held to it exactly, but the question type really depends on what type of review you're going to do. And we're going to talk some more about that later in this presentation. But one of the biggest things that we see is people come in and we're wanting to do a systematic review. And the systematic review, like the question they have doesn't really fit that, right? Like systematic reviews, you're trying to bring all these populations together from all these different articles, and they need to be similar enough that you can do some type of analysis on it. And that's often not how questions come to us, right? So scoping reviews are usually where we end up leading people, because those questions can be more broad. Often you're wanting to do these reviews because it's a new area of research. So like there's not going to be that much out there of in the literature already. So scoping reviews have different methodologies for that. And we're going to talk some more about that, but we have a whole page dedicated on our systematic review guide on how to develop a research question and how different questions meet with different types of review methodologies. So we also talk about, we have a whole guide on our health disparities literature guide. And so it helps you search for health disparities literature. And these two videos it can help you when you're developing a searchable topic. So these really focus on health disparities literature, but they can the concepts in here can be applied to multiple areas. So the first one helps you develop a searchable topic, what's actually findable and retrievable. and you can build a search around. And the second video helps on how to generalize your results. And that's really more useful for a literature search than a systematic review or scoping review or other review methodology. So I just want to point these out. They're really great videos and a good place to start if you're having trouble with your question. So what is the hardest part about writing or really doing any of this? And it's really writing a solid research question. Sometimes the questions are too broad, sometimes they're too narrow. A lot of the times I get people who are wanting to look at a very specific region of Appalachia, right? But Appalachia expands so many different areas. So how can we narrow that in a way that is useful for you and your research project? So often people are wanting to look at Appalachia in Kentucky. And so I'll go to some areas and I'll say like, here is the areas that are most similar to Kentucky Appalachia. So that's like Virginia and West Virginia. And we can add some of those contexts in there. So that's one way that we can make things a little bit more narrower. So you're not getting things from New York and Pennsylvania all the way down to Alabama and Georgia, how we can tie in some of your, or narrow your results some. And one other thing, like for scoping reviews or systematic reviews or any evidence synthesis, which is another name for all those types of reviews, is the question determines your methodology. So like I was explaining previously, scoping reviews, questions are usually more broad in nature. Systematic reviews are usually very comparative in nature. And so an unrefined research question is actually the most common pitfall that we see when we're helping people with literature searching or systematic review searching. So the more like refined you can make your question, the better, and the less results you're going to have to go through. So if we have just a moment, if people want to participate, you can scan this Mentimeter. There's also a code. You can go to menti.com. I'm actually going to share my other screen, and we're going to do this activity if people do not mind. So this is just something I like to do to see which one you all think is the most searchable question. So you can scan the QR code on the screen. You can go to menti.com and then just type in the question 9544-2616, or not the question, the code. And then you can answer this question. I'll give us just a few seconds if people would like to participate. And the questions are, what is the most effective treatment for skin cancer? Does a daily mindfulness-based practice reduce burnout in emergency department physicians? How does PrEP education impact morbidity and mortality among IV drug users in Eastern Kentucky? Are weight loss apps, there's apps and effective or as effective as in-person coaching? Sorry, there's some errors right there in that sentence. I apologize. So I want to see which one you all think is the most searchable. Just give it another couple of seconds or a few seconds. Okay. It's slowing down a little bit. So I'm going to go on and start talking about these. So this is a very common these are very common types of questions that we receive and people want help with. So I'm just going to take these one by one. So what is the most effective treatment for skin cancer? That one is too broad. It's too broad because there's so many different treatments. So it would be really better to like aim at comparing to treatments in like a literature search or a systematic review. Does a daily mindfulness-based practice reduce burnout in emergency department physicians? That's actually the most searchable question from a librarian's perspective. It's very, very easy to pull out like the mindful-based practice. You can pull out terms for that. You can pull out burnout and you can pull out physicians, and even you can narrow it down to emergency physicians. It could be a little bit too narrow. You might have to broaden out to just physicians and then generalize it to other types of doctors, but generally that's the most searchable question in my opinion as a librarian. And then the next one, that one's way too narrow. So the first one was too broad. The third one here is too narrow. And that's really because of the Eastern Kentucky piece of it. And morbidity and mortality is also a little bit hard to search, but that's not really what makes the question difficult. It's just too narrow with Eastern Kentucky. And we often get that. We get people wanting to look at specific counties or specific regions in Kentucky, and the way literature is put into databases isn't that granular. You'll be lucky if you get Kentucky on it. So just to be aware of like, and of how your question can shape if it's searchable. And you can also come to a librarian. We're always here to help you and help you narrow those questions and give you suggestions on what might be the best way to move forward. Okay, thank you for everyone who participated. I'm going to go back to my slides now. Okay. Okay, so now we're going to get into the differences. What is literature searching? So literature searching is usually it can be very specific or broad. It helps you understand the complexity of a clinical issue. It gives you insight into the scope of a problem and provides you with the best treatment approaches and the best available evidence on the topic. Of course, you still have to appraise that evidence, but it will give you the big part, like the big peaks of what's happening in whatever topic you're searching. Literature searching is more, it's really good for like quick turnaround. It's not comprehensive. So what are the steps of literature searching? So you don't have to do the framework piece. I already talked some about this, but it can be helpful, especially if your topic is nebulous and it doesn't have very specific like pieces to it. It doesn't follow PICO, for example. Some of these other frameworks might help you shape that question to something that's more searchable. You can identify databases. A lot of literature searches only happen in one database. But you can search multiple ones. The more databases you add, the more comprehensive it's going to be. That's the reason in systematic review or scoping reviews, you actually have to search multiple databases. In literature searching, you don't have to do that. You need to conduct your search in the proper syntax for each database. I like to point this one out because not everyone knows that each database kind of speaks a different language. So parentheses will work for phrase searching in PubMed, but you have to go to like single quotes inside of Embase. And there's lots of intricacies like that from database to database. And then select relevant articles and review each to determine if they meet your needs. And then you can redo the search. It's an iterative process. A lot of the times when we're working with people on literature searching, we'll go back and forth a few times and make sure we're catching what you need to be captured in your search. So these are some databases that are available to you, and your topic really defines what database you should be using. Most people use PubMed in the health fields. It's the most comprehensive, it's the most broad, and it's a really great database. I would say 90% of my literature searching happens in PubMed. But all these other ones are really useful for specific reasons. So if you're trying to look at conference abstracts or emerging sources, so sources that are they don't quite have impact factors yet, but they're almost there to get impact factors, Web of Science is a great tool for that. For psychological topics, PsycInfo is really great. For nursing and allied health, CINAHL is really great. Embase is really good for pharmacology and as well as the basic sciences. So these databases matter because they index different things. So you might, if you're doing an allied health topic, you're going to find more things in CINAHL that are going to be more appropriate to your search. So sometimes that's a better database to go if you're really just trying to be really specific and get a handful of articles. So why are there so many databases? I kind of went over this in the previous slide. Databases index different topics in journals. So like I said, something like Embase is going to be really good for pharmacy type of searching. We have hundreds of them. If you need help selecting one or knowing the syntax for one or whatever it is, you can reach out to one of us at the Medical Center Library and we're happy to help. And then like I said, each database speaks a little bit different language. And if you are having trouble with that, you'll get errors. More than likely, you can reach out to us and we can help you fix that syntax. Okay, so here is an example of literature searching. So the reason you search multiple databases is because you're going to catch more articles, right? Literature searching, you're not going to catch every single article out there. You're just trying to get the ones that kind of are overlapping. So those are going to be the most pertinent articles. And so you're aiming really here at precision searching and not sensitive searching. And I'll go into some of that too in a moment. Here are some tutorials available to you about literature searching and databases that are available. We update these fairly regularly. So there's just a general one about what databases are available, what the coverages are, and then we have tutorials. If you've never searched PubMed or Embase or Web of Science or CINAHL or SecInfo, these are available to you. So literature searching is the foundation of systematic reviews. So sometimes we'll get people wanting help with a literature search, but what they really need help is a systematic review or a narrative review search. So literature searching is the foundation, those basic skills into all these different types of methodologies. They're all different types. The type of question you have influences which one of these reviews you're going to do. So for example, umbrella reviews are just systematic reviews of systematic reviews, right? So your included ones are systematic reviews. And that your question then influences the selection of the umbrella review. Because if it's a really well-known topic, there's probably been systematic reviews done on it. So you want to bring all that data together and actually appraise the systematic reviews. That's when you would select an umbrella review. And all of these have those type of topics. Like I said, a scoping review is usually broad. It's examining the literature, trying to find gaps, or if it's a new area, what areas are being researched, which ones aren't. That's where scoping reviews come into play. Okay. And we have this tool here that you all can use. We actually have a video tutorial of this too, and we actually go through and break down each one. It's kind of blurry, isn't it? Why is it? I'm sorry. Technology problems, I apologize. Okay. Sorry, everyone, I'm having some technology issues. It's supposed to be here. Okay. So what you do is you actually can click through, and this flowchart will walk you through the process of what review to choose. So do you plan to gather all evidence on the topic? And if you don't, then a literature review is what's the best type of review for you. And literature reviews usually answer broad questions. They are aiming at summarizing a topic, not being comprehensive on a topic, for example. And then like, I keep hitting the wrong button. I am so sorry, everyone. Okay, there we go. I'm so sorry. Okay. And then like, if you are trying to gather all the evidence, then it goes, do you have a formulated research question? And this is kind of what we've been talking about already. If no, here's some frameworks to consider, and you can examine those. And then do you have 12 to 24 months to complete this project? And this is a big question that we ask people because literature searching can be done in a few weeks. A narrative review can be done pretty quickly. These other types of reviews usually take a year to 2 years. I think the quickest one I've ever had done is like 6 months, and that's like a rapid review. And that's what kind of this is like now you can choose a rapid review. So I won't continue going through this today. We have some tutorials available that goes through this, but this is a really great tool if you don't know which type of review you want to do. It goes through scoping reviews, it goes through meta-analysis, systematic reviews, and it tells you what you need and gives you areas to check as you're moving forward. So it's a really great tool for that. Okay. So literature reviews analyze and discuss published literature. It's summarized, synthesized, and can critique the literature. It's not comprehensive. It's kind of what I'm saying. It has a background, a discussion paper. You're probably very familiar with this. So here's an example search of what a literature search might look like. So I'm using subject headings, I'm using field codes, and you can see I'm using compartment syndrome. And then like this, I'm adding that with the thigh muscle and then adding exertion, and we're looking at that. It's going to get a lot of results, but it's going to give you like the best match ones up top. So that's going to be much more precise. So so what are literature reviews great for? They're great for a quick review. You will not have a comprehensive list of all articles. Instead, you'll have a precise allotment of the literature. You can help prove that not much exists out there. A literature search is really good in new research as well, because maybe there's not much published, and by searching this way, you can get a couple articles that show what is out there. They're great for introduction. So this is a really good place to start before you start a systematic review or other evidence synthesis. They help you understand the paper, and you really need to do a literature search before you even start a review, because you need what's called sentinel articles that you would want included in a systematic review. So these really can be the foundations for doing a full systematic review or scoping review. And one thing we do like to point out is literature reviews can be done systematically. The big difference is like precision and sensitivity, and I'll talk some more about that in a moment. But literature and narrative reviews can have a documented search strategy. It can follow a stringent method of data collection. It doesn't require the extensive reporting. You don't have to adhere to a specific guideline like Prisma. And you don't have to blind, and you don't have to go through every single article. You can review it instead of systematically analyzing every article. But you can report those searches if you would like, and if that would be useful to whatever journal you are doing. So we work with students a lot on this, where we're doing a systematized narrative review, where we're teaching them how to search, how to report searches, things like that, but they're not going through the whole methodological process of going like blinding or norming and all of that that's required from the review. So here is where we're at, like with precision and sensitivity. So literature reviews and literature searching aims for precision. So we're aiming at a really small selection of articles instead of with systematic reviews. So systematic reviews have a clearly stated set of objectives. It has a reproducible methodology. You are saving those searches, you're documenting your searches, you're documenting everything from start to end. And the big difference with the search is attempting to identify all studies that would meet your eligibility criteria. It is impossible to get every single article out there, but the goal of these is to try and catch every single article that exists on your topic. And this is true for all evidence syntheses. No matter if it's a systematic review, scoping review, rapid review, whatever it may be, you're trying to catch everything that's out there. And that's the big difference. With literature searching, you can select 1 or 2 databases. With evidence synthesis, we recommend a minimum of 3. I think you can do 2 by the rules, but like 3 would be our minimum for ones that we are working on. And the goal of, again, the reason you search multiple databases is because you're trying to catch all the articles, and maybe things are in PubMed but aren't in CINAHL, or in CINAHL and not in PubMed, for example. So that's the reason why you have to search multiple databases. And again, like I've been saying throughout this presentation, evidence synthesis is the broader name for all review types. So we've been trying to use that more because we've been seeing so many more review types. We do a lot of scoping reviews right now. And we don't do quite as many systematic reviews just by the nature of the questions that people are coming to us and asking help for. But you might see the term evidence synthesis moving forward, and that's just the broader name. Evidence synthesis aim at sensitivity, so the opposite of what a literature or narrative review is and what a basic lit search is. We're trying to catch everything that's out there. And like I said, you're not going to catch every single thing. You can see, like, by searching for databases here, we're catching a lot of the literature, the stars being the ones that you want to keep. and would meet your inclusion criteria, but there's still a few here, and that's where hand searching comes in. And I'm not going to get into that today, but we do have some other tutorials on what hand searching is and tools available, but that's like reference checking and citation chaining and things like that. But you can see this is different from what that literature search view was earlier. You're getting more articles by searching more databases. Here are some evidence synthesis must-haves. So these are very different. You can see I didn't give you a list of things that you have to do for a narrative or literature review, but for evidence syntheses, you have to do these things. You have to have a protocol. It's actually a requirement for PRISMA. If you're to be PRISMA compliant is to have a protocol. And the whole point of a protocol, it explains your search strategy, it defines your inclusion exclusion criteria, does a lot of different things. And it really helps reduce bias, right? If you're saying what your inclusion criteria are upfront, then you haven't changed those once you've reviewed the literature. Prospero is a great place to do this, as well as Open Science Framework. And Prospero only does systematic reviews. OSF will take any type of protocol registration. You have to have a reproducible search strategy. So with literature searching, you don't have to do that. You could like change your searches between databases. You can do whatever you really want with those searches. With these, they need to be reproducible and they need to be as similar as possible between databases. They're never going to be 100% exact because syntax is different, terminology is different. A good example is like Embase. You're going to have a whole lot more names in Embase for like a drug than you would in PubMed. And so it's not going to be exactly the same, but as similar as possible. You have to have Sentinel articles. So articles you'd want your search to catch, and that's a test for it, right? So you have your Sentinel articles, you build a search that catches those articles, and you have to test it. You have to keep testing your search against those articles to make sure it's including those. So that's another important part. There's actually some new PRISMA extensions that you have to adhere to as well. So PRISMA searching is a fairly new one, a couple years old now, where it actually lists, it's a whole checklist on what has to be reported from your search strategy. So like the dates the searches were run, the coverages of each database, not just which database you were searching, what were the coverages you were searching. And there's a bunch of other information, and putting your searches into data repositories because they're being viewed more as data. You need a data management plan. You're going to have a bunch of citations, and you really need to understand like where your data is going to live, because I've had people lose track of numbers and not be able to complete their flow diagram. You need at least 2 people. A literature review, you don't need that. You can do it by yourself. You need at least 2 to either do a blinding or a norming when you're reviewing title, abstract, and full text. You have to do critical appraisal and systematic review. Scoping reviews, you don't have to do that. It's a different type of methodology, more like a charting type of methodology. You need software. You need a statistician if you're going to be doing a meta-analysis. You need to know how to do citation or hand searching. That's a requirement. So once you have your included articles, you have to actually go through all of the references and do title, abstract review on those. So it takes a long time. Literature searches can be done pretty quickly. These type of projects take 12 to 36 months in our experience. So I want to talk a little bit about the difference. I've talked some about this throughout the presentation. The 2 most common reviews that we see people wanting to do are systematic and scoping. So systematic reviews, they uncover international evidence, they confirm current practice, address variations, and identify new practices. They identify and inform areas of future research, identify and investigate conflicting results, and then produce statements or guidelines for decision-making. Scoping reviews are different. They tend to, like I've said, look at the type of available evidence in the field, but they don't have to appraise that evidence. They clarify what the concepts are. They might be defining what the literature is saying about this new area of research. They could examine how the research is conducted. That's a really common one, is like they're trying to see what type of studies are happening in a field and where the gaps are and where we need to move. And they will also identify key factors. That's another really common part for scoping reviews. They're looking at population. They're looking at charting like what type of interventions are being implemented in like say Appalachia for a specific area. So there's lots of ways. Those two are some of the most common ones for scoping reviews. And often scoping reviews can be a precursor to a systematic review because maybe you find out in a scoping review, there have been a lot of RCTs done on this study. So you can do a systematic review. So here's some examples of those questions. They have the same rigor. So systematic and scoping reviews have the same rigor. It follows PRISMA. There's actually a PRISMA extension for scoping reviews. They both adhere to the searching extension for PRISMA. The difference is the question type and the method of analysis. So you can kind of see those differences here. Like, for example, our intranasal steroids, oral antihistamines that are controlling allergic rhinitis in adults. That's easy to pull apart, right? You can pull out your steroids, your antihistamines, your rhinitis, and then adult populations, right? That's easy to like frame into a systematic review and bring studies together. Well, like the other ones, like how does hearing loss affect physical fitness or sports engagement? That's really broad, right? Sports engagement can be so many things. So it's really like I hope that helps explain like what I mean by like the question differences between these types of reviews. I also want to talk a little bit about searches. So here is an example of a search that we have done. You can see these are really comprehensive. We're using like title abstract, we're using subject headings. This is one that we have done and actually published into Search Archive, which is the data repository for systematic reviews. Just kind of want to show you what one of those may look like. And then we're going to do some examples here too. So here's one that I found. I actually had a student bring this one to me. It was a systematic review done in a journal. And it's not a bad search, but it does have some biases in it. The really big difference between like literature searching and like systematic review type of searching is that we're trying to eliminate bias in our searches, right? And you're trying to do that no matter what, but in systematic review or any other type of evidence synthesis, you're trying to reduce bias. And this search right here does insert bias. It's not using subject headings. It's not using field codes, so title abstract or text word. And the reason that's important is because the databases are trying to be more Google-like. So if you just search something like this, it's going to be guessing. And I always use the example of minor. If you truncate minor and search for that, it's going to search minors and minority groups. So you're going to really explode your search, and that changes over time. The databases are learning what you're searching, what people are searching. So that's never going to be reproducible, right? Also, like as a librarian, I wouldn't do postpartum women and postpartum depression together because you already the paper has to say both things. So you're inserting bias by having two ands searching the same thing. So it narrows your results. So if I was to do that search, it would look something closer to like what this may look like. It's more sensitive. This is a little bit different search. But it's just an example of what I would do when building this. So you can see that these are aiming at sensitivity. We're using lots of different terms for telehealth and telemedicine. But you can kind of see that teeter-totter there of what we're aiming for. And then like precision searching is more specific. So I'm adding more terms and you can see that the number of results go down here. So I'm aiming for precision. So here's what that precision one would look like. If I was just wanting to look at telemedicine, I'm not having to list out every single piece of telemedicine, whether it's a cell phone or a tablet or whatever it was. With a systematic review, I would be doing that, right? In this type of example for a literature search, I wouldn't have to do that. I'm just wanting to see what things are out there about telemedicine. So this is one way. So this one's more precise and going to return less results. So the last one you saw, it turned a lot of results. This one's now returning a little number of results. So like 700 versus 159. So you can see kind of how we approach literature searching versus systematic review. So this one's more of a literature search where you're just trying to turn around some quick results, and you could add in a date filter here and bring those results down even further. So I hope that helps explain kind of how we approach searching and the difference between precision searching and sensitive searching that you would do in evidence synthesis. Here's some tutorials on that. We talk about literature searching versus systematic reviews. We talk about translation, so like how to take a PubMed search and put it into Embase or CINAHL. I'm going to be doing a new session at the end of this semester that's going to be updating that. So please register for that if you're interested in learning how to translate between databases. But we also have some automation tools, a Q&A, and some other ones here that will be really helpful. And then this choose a review methodology here. This is actually the video of the Prezi I had trouble with earlier. You can actually view that here and actually listen to the video where I go through all those different type of reviews and which one might be best for you. We also have the systematic review guide available to you. There's a lot of great information here. We have consult forms here if you're interested in conducting this. We are on a wait list if you're wanting us to help with the project. We are doing some consultations here or there as one-offs, but for us to be co-authors and work with you on the project, we do have a wait list currently at the Med Center. Okay, and I also want to take a moment to talk about the problems with these methodologies. So this is a really interesting study. I use it a lot when I'm explaining the problem with the kind of explosion of these type of reviews. So this article points out that only 3 in 100 systematic reviews are deemed to have adequate methods and can be clinically useful. And so we've seen an explosion, especially since COVID, I think, in systematic review publications and scoping review publications, all these different type of evidence syntheses. And a lot of them don't actually meet the PRISMA standards, especially with a bunch of new PRISMA standards that have been released in the last couple of years. So I just like to make people aware of this. Like, it's a very rigorous process if you're following all of these checklists and all these guidelines. And that's really the big difference between just a literature search and what makes up a systematic review or other evidence synthesis search. So what can you do? You can appraise reviews yourself. We have some tools available. Moose and Amstar are really great places to start at appraising systematic reviews or other evidence syntheses. Be more knowledgeable about the evidence synthesis practices and produce better reviews. Use our guide. It's a really great tool and we update it. And we have a lot of things that we created. We have a README file that you can use to help manage your data. We have tutorials on how to use EndNote for systematic reviews and other things like that. You can always ask us. We're here to help. We're happy to answer your questions about the process. All of the medical librarians and a lot of our colleagues outside of the medical center participate in these projects. So we are experts in a lot of the areas. And then avoid these common pitfalls, reach out early. We have people who are right in the beginning of their process and we like I said, have a wait list. So you want to reach out to us early if you're wanting to work on a project with us, because we do have like a 3-month wait list before we can start new projects. Really think about your question, be aware about the topics you're choosing to search, like social determinants of health, for example, is really big. It's one we get a lot. So you really want to kind of narrow that down. If we search every single social determinant of health, the search is going to be ginormous, right? And it's going to return a lot of results for you. That's just one example I like to give, but just really think about your question and write a protocol. Start the protocol early, think about what you need to adhere to from PRISMA. PRISMA has a protocol checklist. We also have a protocol tool that we developed that's on our website that will help you write a protocol. And there's a lot of examples in there. We put wording that we put into other protocols that you can reuse. A lot of stuff's already there. And it really helps you think about your data management strategy, your inclusion, exclusion, and how you're going to manage the projects. Recognize the time and budget accordingly. So we often, when we are working with students, really think about their educational workloads, right? What this project's going to be on top of that. Search for reviews already published on your topic. If they already exist, what makes yours different? So I worked with one group where the topic was really already examined in systematic reviews, but they hadn't included the allied health perspective. So we ended up adding allied health databases to fill that gap. And then research tools, begin early on trying to figure out which tools you're going to use. If you're going to need a statistician, if you're going to need software, if you're going to need to learn that software, plan ahead, and that will make your process a whole lot quicker moving forward. This is mainly for systematic reviews or evidence syntheses. Literature searching, again, can be done much quicker. And we have some other tutorials if you're brand new to searching, if you're trying to understand what a PubMed result page is, how to read a citation, like how to even use Boolean or Mesh. We have some tutorials here available to you. And then closing this up, the workshop series, like I said, I'm going to be doing one coming up in November on translation. We are doing a whole series on the horrors of bad research. So how to do critical appraisal and dodge deception. We're doing one on AI and some other things throughout the month of September, October, November. So please register and attend those. And then I will open it up to any questions you all may have.